Kid Hardy and Michael Ford are coming. Ellen Wilkinson, the red flag, she is humming. We get around not as much as Dominic Cummings, even though he's driving blind. We are the Labour grassroots, where like-minded folk dwell. From countryside to city, it's warm and it's witty, the antidote to Priti Patel. We are the Labour grassroots, time to raise a racket. The future is as bright as Crispin's red jacket. This is the space where we all go hell for leather, free from all the biased BBC blether. Like track and trace, we're better together, just as Carrie and Meg. Yeah, we got all the people from Inverness, Skegness, Barrow, Inverness, Chester, Leicester, Cirencester, Shrewsbury, Oswald Street, Swansea, Carnackley, Barnsley, Beccles, Nottingham and Eccles. We are the Labour grassroots, time to plant some grass, where we've always had social distancing between us and the upper class.
Very shocked and very disappointed. I've been in the Labour Party all my life, and I want to make it absolutely clear. Anti-Semitism has no place whatsoever in our party or our movement. I've opposed it and racism in all its forms all my life, and that is what I've made clear during my leadership of the party, and I make clear today as a Member of Parliament and proud to be one. What I'll be doing is appealing to the party and those that have made this decision to kindly think again. All I've done is pointed out that this terrible issue of anti-Semitism does exist, and anyone that has anti-Semitic views has no place in the Labour movement or the Labour Party, and we have to deal with it. That is why I set up a process to deal with it. I've explained what I said, I've explained what I meant by it. I am not diminishing or minimising the issue of anti-Semitism. It is serious, it is real, it does exist. Quite clearly, a decision was made in a very quick way. And I just say, hang on a minute, let's all keep a bit calmer. Let's think again about this whole issue. Our party comes together to fight racism and injustice, but we also come together to bring about economic justice for the people of this country. That is what unites our movement and our party, and that is what I appeal to members to focus on. Don't go away, don't leave the party, stay in the party and argue the case for economic and social justice in our society.
Good morning. This is not the Andrew Marr show, and we've got a discussion today about the suspension of Jeremy Corbyn and what it means for everyone else. I've got two people who've come onto the show who have a legal background, who were both part of the team. I think they were the team that managed to make sure Jeremy Corbyn was on the ballot in 2016, when the party was trying to say that maybe the leader shouldn't be on the ballot. Now, I'm sure that wasn't politically motivated, that the party was saying that Jeremy Corbyn shouldn't be on the ballot paper. I'm sure that was just about rules and processes. But Howard Beckett, are you there? You were in that meeting, weren't you, in 2016?
I was, yes, Crispin. I was fortunate enough to lead that team. Obviously, Martin Howe was the solicitor. And we were up against, coincidentally, the exact same legal team who ended up representing Jerry Corbyn in his attempt to undermine the General Secretary election a year later. So, yes, it's a matter of coincidence that their same legal team was exactly the same legal team that was trying to oust Len McCluskey from General Secretary of Unite.
Well, now, what I wanted to ask you to start with, we've had some questions have come in, but I'm confused. What is the basis for Jeremy Corbyn being suspended? Is there a particular rule he's broken?
Well, no, there's not, in my view. What we have at the moment, and I said this to David Evans at the NEC. We have a situation where there's no need for the Labour Party to brief the media behind the scenes in in a clandestine fashion, because we have the leader of the Labour Party going out and briefing the media in person daily at the moment, regardless of the rights of an individual to his data protection privacy, regardless of the rights of process, regardless of the rules of law. Leader of the Labour Party is going out as recently as this morning and giving his opinion in respect of the matter. And it appears to be, from what he's saying, that the charge that is against Jeremy is that by saying that we should understand the scale of the problem within Labour, that in some way that minimises the issue of anti-Semitism, which obviously it does not. Anyone who attacks, who understands the need to tackle racism in any part of society knows that you must understand the scale of the racism in order to be able to deal with it. And that's precisely what Jeremy said. The clip that you played at the start of this programme is an excellent clip, will no doubt be used in respect of the defence of Jeremy, where he again and again and again says that he abhors anti-racism, that he does not minimise anti-Semitism, rather he does not minimise anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, that any anti-Semite within the Labour Party is one too many, that it is a scourge that we must oust, but that we must understand the scale of the problem. And the reality, of course, is that Jeremy unjustly has been given ownership of every anti-Semitic trope that has ever been said by a member of the Labour Party during his time as leader, and he's been given that ownership by the right-wing media. So he has the right to defend his record in respect of what he tried to do as a leader. And I've been through the EHRC report, Crispin, as you would expect, and on no less than 12 separate occasions, the EHRC report refers to the improvements that were made in tackling anti-Semitism under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. And I would specifically ask everybody, I have tweeted it, but I would specifically ask everybody to look to page 27 of the EHRC report, where they specifically say that Article 10, which is your rights of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, would protect an individual who wants to talk about their own experience in reference to the scale of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. So it seems to me that whoever has taken this decision, I have no doubt in my mind as to who took this decision. It seems to me that you need to be extraordinarily naive not to point the finger at political interference. But it seems to me that the decision has been taken in haste, as Jeremy correctly said. The press conference that Keir Starmer gave was, in my view, a car crash of a press conference in any guise, because he was angry and he didn't seem able to control his anger. And the decision that was taken a matter of minutes after that press conference seems to be one that was taken in anger.
So, I mean, I am fearful that I could be suspended because I might say that I support Jeremy Corbyn, or that I agree with the sentiments of what he might have said on some particular day. I'm trying to tread on eggshells because I don't know if I'll say the wrong thing. Should we be fearful about what we write on social media?
Yes, there's no other way of answering that question, Crispin, unfortunately. You know, I feel the same way myself. It's difficult now for people to be brave and step forward and give their honest opinion, because it seems to be that the leadership of the Labour Party wants to make up the rules as they go along and suspend people if they disagree with them. So it's very difficult. I have no doubt that even this interview that you're questioning of me, I have no doubt that it'll end up in the hands of Keir Starmer, and that he will look through it forensically to see if there's anything that he can do in reference to my comments. So people should be fearful, and obviously, you know, people need to be careful. Because we need to fight to get through this. And I would say this, Crispin, because a lot of people obviously feel depressed at this moment in time, and, you know, low and negative. I would say this in regard to it, because I refuse to feel depressed and low and negative at this moment in time. I just refuse to, because this is now a time to fight. And in my view, we can reflect on ourselves in a positive manner that we have a left. Despite the right-wing media and all that they say, despite the efforts of the of the right wing to control the leadership of the Labour Party, despite what has gone on in respect of Becky Long-Bailey, in regard to the lamentable response to Black Lives Matter, in regard to the gerrymandering of the NEC elections, in regard to the absolutely pathetic and outrageous decision to abstain on the covert human surveillance bill. Despite all of that, we have a left. And, you know, during the years of Tony Blair, the left disappeared. We have a left, and we have a left that is coming together and can come together to fight back. Whenever people talk of civil war within the Labour Party, that civil war is clearly possible because we have a left. And so I refuse to feel depressed and to go away in respect of this. And what I would say to everybody is to be strong, to be positive, to believe in our principles, to step forward, but obviously to be careful. The language that I have used in respect of this is that obviously Jeremy Corbyn is going to want to talk about the scale of racism in the Labour Party, anti-Semitism in particular, because you must understand the scale in order to tackle the problem, to scourge the disease of anti-Semitism. You must understand the scale of it. And I've also, obviously, as I said, that Jeremy is entitled to protect his own record in respect of the improvements that he made. And it is obvious that we must have a debate about the role of the right-wing media, a right-wing media that refuses to shine any light on the Islamophobia that is obviously within all elements of the Tory party. And a right-wing media that was determined to try and get the EHRC to make a finding that Labour is institutionally racist, a finding that they did not make. So I would just say to everybody, of course, be careful, but this is a time to come together and to believe in the left and to have strength with unity of purpose.
Right, I might come back to you in a sec, Howard, but I know Mark McDonald's there, and he's probably wants to say something as well. Mark was part of the same team. So many people on this Zoom, it's hard to actually find him, but I have found him. Mark, are you there?
I am here, yes.
So Mark, are you worried about what you say on social media?
I am worried, but you know, I've been working, as you know, I've with Labour Friends of Palestine. Having set that up now over 10 years ago, I've been focusing and discussing issues in relation to Palestine and Palestinian human rights now for the last 15 years. And the reason why I say that is because I think that there is a way of having a discussion and a debate without going into other areas and without finding yourself under the spotlight in relation to other discussions, particularly in relation to anti-Semitism. And if you follow my Twitter feed, you'll see every morning I put something up in relation to do with Palestinian human rights. And I always put hashtag keep focus, because we can do that. But specifically on the issue in relation to, and that's about social media and looking at what you put on social media and how you discuss issues. And in relation to what's happening right now with Jeremy, there are two separate issues, aren't there? I mean, there's the suspension of Jeremy, and I don't see there's any reason why anybody can't discuss or be outraged or send out tweets or put issues on their Facebook in relation to the anger of what is taking place with Jeremy. Then there's the issue of the report. Now, when it comes to the report, I think we do need to be careful. And I think we do need to be careful on what we say about the report. I think Howard is absolutely right. Every single issue in relation to it, in relation to the disgust that we find ourselves in by having members of the Labour Party who are anti-Semitic. And let's not get away from the fact that there are, and there have been over the years, comments made by members of the Labour Party that are clearly anti-Semitic. I've experienced it myself when I stood as a parliamentary candidate, to local members who made anti-Semitic comments. I mean, blatant anti-Semitic comments, both of whom had to be removed from the party. So to say that it doesn't exist is obviously wrong. But I can't, you know, from the point of view of what we put on social media and what we say, we can focus upon one area, but when it comes to the issue of the report, look at the report, take out elements of the report that we know highlight the issues and discuss in relation to anti-Semitism, and put it out there. I can't see any reason why we can't do that. Now, specifically in relation to the suspension of Jeremy, it seems the timing of it and how it happened, and the fact that Dave Evans did this very quickly, it would be very surprising, given the seniority of Jeremy, that that a discussion at senior level of the Labour Party did not go ahead, and that decision seems to have been made in haste. Listening to Keir this morning, it would seem, and this is my hope, and maybe slightly over optimistically, that these issues are going to be dealt with behind closed doors, and that we're going to hopefully come out of this fairly quickly. My concern is this: looking at other MPs that have been suspended over the years, sometimes there's a tendency politically to kick these things into the long grass, and things not to be dealt with quickly. And I don't think it's any helpful to anybody to have this dragged out for a very long time, have court cases, freedom of information, requests in relation to what emails went where and what communications went where. What we need this to be dealt with quickly. And I'm hoping, and listening to what Len McCluskey said the other day, that we're going to have, that sensible heads are going to reign, and we're going to be able to have quiet conversations. We're going to be able to come through this and move on, which is what we need to be doing. Right now, with this awful Tory government, we need to be focusing on them.
Yeah, that's what I was saying at the beginning. There's these problems with the coronavirus, and we're not really focused on that. And we've now there's a lot of questions about retweeting and what can be done specifically. Mm-hmm. If people, for example, retweeted Jeremy Corbyn's Facebook post, which caused him to be suspended, mm-hmm. would that be enough for that person to be suspended?
I think you enter into that grey area. And look, Jeremy Corbyn was suspended for the statement that we made. We all know the statement that he made. It was, I presume that the decision was made that he brought the party in disrepute, which seems to be the catch-all rule in relation to a lot of things that have happened.
So sorry, that's the actual reason he's suspended.
No, I don't know. He would have received a letter telling him what. I haven't seen the letter, right. But you often find that the issue is bringing the party into disrepute, right. And that's the common rule which the party falls back on when disciplining individuals. And if you look at historically, particularly in relation to those that have been expelled in relation to anti-Semitism, it's not necessarily that they've been found to be an anti-Semite, it's more that they've been brought the party into disrepute by things that they've said and done. So you've got this grey area that you enter into once you engage with, obviously, someone. The party has decided that by making that statement that Jeremy's did, that there is an argument that he has brought the party into disrepute. The rights and wrong with that we can discuss for a long time if we want, but that's the area. Now, by retweeting it, are you then endorsing that and saying, well, that was the right thing to do? So it's just a grey area that you don't need to go into or to catch, to be caught by. Why do it? We all know it. We all know his statement. We've all seen it on YouTube. So personally, I wouldn't do it.
No, well, I'm just but I don't know. People don't know what a retweet means as opposed to an original tweet, and it's quite strange how fearful we're getting that if people are sort of two taps of a phone away from being suspended from the Labour Party for bringing the party into disrepute. So you could actually just tap a phone twice by mistake. My 2-year-olds could pick up my phone and start tapping away, and before I know it, I could be on a on a list. I don't know. I mean, it's bizarre. I think it's bizarre that we can have that.
Well, but Crispin, here's the thing. Look, if you saw something completely anti-Semitic, anti-Islamophobic or racist on Twitter, and you wouldn't retweet it. You wouldn't retweet it, and you wouldn't put it on your Facebook. You just read before you retweet. Now, don't get me wrong, we've all been caught out by liking something that we shouldn't like or retweeting that we shouldn't retweet. But the question is, your question is, should we be careful? The answer to that question is yes. Yes, we should. And I don't think there's any reason. I don't accept my two-year-old could have done it. We all know what we're doing on social.
No, I know, but you're a barrister. You'll get me in court anytime. So I'm not going to try and get away from this position. But I was going to move on and bring in Glynis, who has been well, she can explain. Glynis,
hello.
You were suspended by the party, and you challenged that.
I did.
Could you tell us a story? What happened?
Sure. So I was suspended for breaching the rules on recruitment back in September 2016. And those of you listening will probably remember you mentioned it, I think, Crispin, about the leadership election that was going on and whether or not Jeremy Corbyn should be on the ballot, which was a bit bizarre, wasn't it? That's like saying, I wonder if, Usain Bolt would win this race, but let's not have him in the race and let everybody else run. It was stupid, wasn't it, really? So what had happened is, at the time, I think the NEC did meet to determine that Jeremy Corbyn could be on the leadership ballot, but at the same time, they also said that members who joined after, I think it was the 12th of January 2016, would not be eligible to vote unless they registered as a supporter and paid £25. Now, this was specifically aimed at that cohort of registered supporters that had joined, paid their £3, to sort of be a registered supporter of the Labour Party. So these people were completely disenfranchised. It was almost like a voting tax that they had to pay to vote for the candidate of their choice. And there was a group of us at the time on social media. I remember it was quite late in the evening, I think way past my bedtime actually, and we were having this debate. Most of us said, that we felt it was, a terrible, terrible decision. And so we decided that we didn't want to give money to people to vote, but we would set up a crowdfund and say, you pay the £25, and obviously if you've had to utilise that £25 from your food bill or from the money that you were keeping back to buy your child a coat or for your best fare back and forth to work, we'll give you money towards that. And that's what we did. So as you can imagine, the NEC, the government, the Governance and Legal Unit, got to hear of this, and they contacted the person who'd set it up with crowdfunding, because with crowdfunding they've got to have a named person. So this named person who had sort of administered this crowdfund was contacted by Sam Matthews at about 3:30, 4 o'clock on a Friday, the 15th, I think it was, of July. I remember it well, and was told that within 48 hours she had to close the page and refund the monies to the people who'd made the pledge. So of course you can imagine at that time on a Friday she couldn't get hold of anybody to sort of discuss the legal implications, etc. So she decided, very reluctantly, but felt that it was the right thing to do, to close the page and reimburse the monies to the individuals who'd made the pledge. Now, some of you will understand, I'm sure, that the way the crowdfund works is you make the pledge, they take the money from your account and they keep it. That's obviously how they make their money, because they obviously gain interest on those monies that they're keeping. And then once the page is closed or the target is reached, they get in touch with the page organizer, and then the monies are paid to them and disbursed. So she did manage within that 48-hour period to get the page closed and get crowdfund to refund the monies. and obviously contacted Sam Matthews, and he said something along the lines of, oh yeah, thanks for doing that, I acknowledge you doing that, and there won't be any further action. And then several months later, I was suspended for breaching the rules on recruitment, and I had no idea really what that meant. And I looked through the rule book, and I think I rang Labour HQ, and they were as much use as a chocolate fire guard, wouldn't sort of tell me anything. And yeah, and I mean, cut a long story short, I think I was just so incensed. I was so incensed at the way that I had been treated. And it wasn't just me, it was other people who probably, you know, because of my experiences, because although not a lawyer, I work in a legal department within a very large, one of the largest government departments. So I am a litigator within that department, but a non-legal one. And, you know, my background as a nurse within the NHS for 10 years and lots of other jobs that I've done has brought me to a place where I don't take many prisoners. And if I see that something is wrong, I will do something about it. And I just thought, I am taking these people to court for breach of contract and for breaching the Data Protection Act. And that's what I did. So, you know, those amongst you who know about these things will know that when you make a claim to the county court, one of the things you have to do, because the courts are very big on it, is say whether or not you would be amenable to alternative dispute resolution. And I actually was, as you can probably tell from listening to me, I love to talk and discuss things. So I put in the claim that I would be more than happy, you know, to have a round table meeting without prejudice and sort this out, you know, let's be grown up. No, they didn't want to do that. I thought, hey ho, there you go. So we continued on the path, and I put in all my evidence and put in a witness statement. And I think what happened is, at the time, the Governance and Legal Unit didn't actually have any legally qualified people in it, as I understand. And so they were outsourcing their legal services to external counsel and solicitors. And that's what happened in my case. So I had put in a witness statement, and basically everything was in there chapter and verse with supporting documents exhibited to the witness statement. And so I think what happened is when a real lawyer looked at my witness statements and all the evidence, they thought, shit, we need to do something about this. And at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, just before Wales were about to play Scotland in the Rugby International, I received a phone call from Ian McNichol's solicitor. And he said, oh, my client is concerned about the costs. I said, is he? Is he really? I said, because he wasn't concerned about the costs. When I said about alternative dispute resolution, it was turned down flat. So sorry if I don't believe that. And he said, oh, well, would you be prepared to withdraw? I said, absolutely not. And he said, well, why not? You've been unsuspended, because what had happened is because I put in this claim, they had unsuspended me, but they had left a warning to remain on my file indefinitely. Now, as criminal lawyers, if there's any listening, will know, under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act 1978, any conviction is deemed to be spent after a period of time. Now, obviously, the more serious the offence, the longer the record will stay in force. And that's because it's obviously what it says, rehabilitate offenders into society so they can take up employment and contribute through their taxes to, you know, to society. And so this warning to remain on file indefinitely, Labour members were actually being treated worse than convicted criminals, which was just crazy. And I'd reported this to the Information Commissioner's Office under the data retention breach, and they'd agreed with me. And they said, no, they must objectively justify the length of time that they keep the warning on file. And so this was also running parallel to this court case at the time. So I'd said to the solicitor, no, I don't care if they've lifted my suspension, that's just not enough. I am not having a warning remaining on file indefinitely. So it's up to you, because the case had been listed for hearing on the Tuesday. And as I said, this was the Saturday. So he said, right, well, if I can get the warning lifted as well, would you agree to doing a joint application to the court to stop the proceedings? I said, yeah, I'm happy with that if you sort that out. So anyway, within sort of like an hour, bearing in mind this is Saturday afternoon, he'd emailed me back with an email from Governance and Legal Unit to say that the warning was removed from this record, that record, this record, you know, and it was signed and everything. So I agreed to withdraw it from the court action, and the solicitor sent in the papers, which I had to sign, and off it went to the court. But because I am, I've got a suspicious nature, shall we say, I rang the court on the Monday morning and spoke to the clerk and said what had happened. And he said, oh yes, we've had the email in off the solicitor, so we're just looking for a judge now to sign the order. And I said, well, look, you know, really, until I get something from you in black and white, I should still turn up, shouldn't I? And he said, well, technically, yes. But he said, ring me back in about an hour and I should be able to confirm for you. And he said, then I'll email you and the other party, and that'll be your sort of proof that there's no need for you to attend. So I did that and I got the email. So he was lovely, the clerk. We were having a little chat, as you do. And he said, oh, well, he said, that's gonna cost them, you know, to put in the application now. It's going to cost them a couple of £100, because when you make an application to the county court, obviously there's a cost involved. And what was interesting in this witness statement, I think what did it was the fact that the Labour Party, the lawyers amongst you will understand that when they put in a defence to a claim, the Labour Party or an incorporated association or other type of organisations like that, one of the wording says, Ian McNichol, General Secretary of the Labour Party or the UK Labour Party, sued on behalf of all other members of the Labour Party except the claimant. And people were so incensed by the fact that their membership subs were being used for him to mount a defence against me, which, you know, they didn't agree with. They set up a petition against it, and I got blamed for instigating this petition as well by Ian McNichol, which wasn't true, and I proved that. So in the witness statement that I put in, I actually said that I do understand that the court does have the power to apply costs directly to the defendant and not the wider membership, especially if the judge felt that there was an abusive process or the defendant was abusing his position by unnecessarily driving up costs or being intransigent at the expense of the members. So I was basically saying, you muck about with me, pal, and you'll end up paying this out of your own pocket. And I was very clear that I was going to do that. And I think it focused their mind, in all honesty. And I think when they saw that I just was not going to go away, they dropped it all. I mean, you know, I think I was advised at the time, we'd set up a support group on Facebook, and it was fantastic. We had barristers on there and solicitors and trade union representatives, and they were giving me a lot of pro bono advice, for which I am eternally grateful. You know, it was so helpful, some of the information that they were giving me. I think that's what did it in the end, is that because I stood firm, and because I sort of held up a mirror to them and their actions, I think they realised that once it went to court, there would be nowhere to hide. If they said something, they would have to show it. They'd have to provide proof, because they were making the allegation, and the burden of proof is on the person making the allegation, not me. I didn't have to prove anything. It was them that had to do that. And I think they realised, albeit late in the day, that, you know, I was best off being left alone. So, you know, Mark and Howard are right about what they say. You know, I can see it already about people being hyper vigilant and self-imposing these sort of restrictions on themselves on social media. But, you know, we should be allowed to say what we think. We should be allowed to do what we think, as long as it's not illegal, immoral or fattening. You know, there is no right not to be offended. Obviously, there are specific rules around homophobia, racism, etc., and obviously things to do with gender recognition, things like that. But in terms of just the normal day-to-day banter that you have with somebody, you know, I think we are on a bit of a slippery slope, really, and I think we need to sort of just be aware of this. That Article 10 does exist, and it's not an overarching right, like the right to life, for example. It is a qualifying right, but it is something that we you know, we shouldn't be afraid all the time. You know, we do have legal routes that we can go down, and I do think, you know, I'm very angry about what's happened to Jeremy Corbyn. I hope he does go legal on them. I really, really do, because I think they've breached so many of their own rules, as well as the Data Protection Act. I mean, he was told about his suspension by a photographer, I believe. And I mean, that's happened and is happening a lot, where people in the Labour Party, prior to the person being told they are suspended, will leak information to the media.
Yeah.
And then they talk about the member bringing the party into disrepute, but it's not, it's them, because they're leaking that information. They
Right.
are the ones that are bringing the party into
Okay,
disrepute.
sorry, Glynis,
Thank you, Kristen.
it wasn't, I wouldn't call it a shaggy dog story, but it was a long story.
Sorry.
And I appreciate it was very good to hear your story, and thank you very much for coming on and going through it all in such detail.
Oh, thank you. Sorry I took so much time, but
no, it's fine. It's fine. Howard, sorry to keep you there. You can't stay for long, but I just wanted to say what Glynis was saying about we shouldn't that Jeremy has a strong legal case is what she was saying.
Well, firstly, Crispin, well done to Glynis. Absolutely fantastic. Well done, and that's the way that we have to approach these things. And there will be no backing down in reference to Jeremy's case. In fact, there'll be very much a stepping forward in respect of Jeremy's case. We've been here before. Been here in respect of Falkirk. We've been here in respect of Jeremy getting on the second ballot paper. And if Keir Starmer was viewing this, if somebody was sending it to him, my message to Keir Starmer would be very simple, and that is, if you want to step forward, I'll step forward as well, because there will be no backing down in respect of this. Jeremy will get all the support he needs, and we will fight for Jeremy. I would say, in respect of it, I do have a slight difference here in respect of Mark's position. Obviously, I'm saying to people, do be careful, but I do not believe that people should be quiet. Quite the contrary. People need to be strong and step forward, be careful about what you say. But obviously, it's in there, in the report, in respect to the HRC, that people's freedom of expression and freedom of speech is preserved. And what the HRC very clearly says is that your freedom of speech and your freedom of expression is not one that allows you or permits you to say things that would be unlawful. So obviously, an anti-Semitic response is unlawful, and obviously rightly so. Everybody in this room absolutely abhors any anti-Semite being in the Labour Party. So illegal activity is not permitted by way of freedom of speech, but the EHRC specifically says that you will be protected in reference to your wish to discuss the scale of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, specifically references it. And understandably so, because I keep on saying it, how can you possibly tackle a scourge of anti-Semitism without knowing the scale of what you face? And that's the reason as to why people must debate that scale at every stage. But I don't believe that people should be silenced. If anybody is fearful about retweeting Jeremy's tweet, well, I don't think you should be. Thousands of people had retweeted it beforehand. If you want to put on your Twitter account that a retweet is not an endorsement, just to cover you generally in respect of things, then please do. But do not be silent. Do not be quiet in reference to this. And there will be the full weight of the left movement, which is already mobilised in respect of a team behind Jeremy. There's work going on this weekend in respect of that. And obviously, Mark referenced the fact that obviously there will be conversations happening, and you would expect that. But there will be also conversations happening within the environment of knowing that if you cannot resolve this, this is what you will get. And you will get freedom of information requests. You will get a demand for phone records. You will want to know, we will want to know, at what time did David Evans discuss this with Keir Starmer? We will want to know at what time did he discuss it with Angela Rayner. We will want to know, was the email drafted before or after your discussions? We will want to know who took the decision to allow the media to discuss an individual's rights before the individual himself had been advised of it. We will want to know how it got into the hands of the Press Association, because Glynis is quite right. A photographer told Jeremy Corbyn of this. What planet, frankly, does the General Secretary of the Labour Party live in, where he believes that the way to communicate this to an ex-leader of the Labour Party is by way of a generic email from the disputes department, rather than even the common courtesy of a telephone call? So absolutely, Crispin, there is a wish for on all sides, obviously, to avoid what has been termed a civil war. But people have to understand the simple reality of this, that if you want a war, then there's people on the other side who are quite prepared to fight it.
Thank you, Howard. Mark wants to come back in. I think he wants to show that he wasn't saying we shouldn't.
I want to start by saying, if I am ever in trouble, I want this man next to me. Okay, actually, I want this man in front of me. He's one of the most formidable people on the left, particularly in the law. No, we've got to be robust and we've got to defend. Jeremy has defended many of us in his lifetime in politics, and we've got to make sure that we're now with him shoulder to shoulder. I think specifically your question was, well, you know, should we be careful what we're doing on social media? And yes is the answer. And so we must do, because right now the last thing we want are a cult of the left members standing for NEC elections. There is nothing right now more crucial than ensuring that we get the right people on the NEC. And that includes voting for the slate of the six and making sure that they're there, but also that you are there. And let me say that I am there as well, that we make sure that we get a strong turnout and a strong membership. Now, that's the other thing that we need to know. There's this whole discussion about, if you voted and then you've left, does your vote still count? Now, we've got to be careful that every single person on the left that leaves, they might not be able to vote for people that are going on the NEC from the left. And that leaves a whole vacuum that will be filled by the right.
Do you not know the rule on that? Is there no? Do you know that?
I've been trying to find out where that actually comes from, and whether or not that's simply rumour. I don't know the rule. I mean, we've all seen the note from the General Secretary going out to regions saying we need more staff to deal with all the influx in relation to those members that we receive emails from. Whether that's to do with the fact that it's to do with the overlaying of the NEC elections, I don't know. But we've got to be careful. Right now, we've got these elections coming that are ongoing. We've got to make sure we get our votes in. We've got to make sure that they count.
Right. Okay. I'm going. I've really overrun on the legal stuff here, but it was great to hear you all. Thank you, Howard and Mark and Glynis. Very inspiring to hear from you all. I'm going to. I asked some Labour members if they'd like to speak about this in a survey that I sent out, and John Booth was one of the respondents. Your response to the survey was about the parties, how you felt about the party's fragility.
Yes, absolutely. And we're extremely fragile because it's a broad church. And some of the people in the broad church have got malign intent. And I think that's been very well demonstrated in the 5 years that Jeremy was leader. And I've still got an open mind as to whether Keir Starmer has the sense to maintain the broad church. But I have my doubts. I have my doubts because to some extent we've been there before with Tony Blair and not wanting members. He found his money from other sources than the members. And I fear that, but I'm wanting the party to be a safe place for political discussion. That's what it's always been. And to hear some of the things that people are now frightened of, I'm at the age where I've no political ambition, so I'll say pretty much what I want with the due caution online here as ever. I'm not going to be upsetting people in that kind of way. But it's absolutely scandalous that party members have been so undermined in their freedom to talk to each other in the safe space of the party for fear of being filmed by somebody on a mobile phone and that being then passed to a Murdoch newspaper. It's utterly scandalous that that's been happening for years. And we should have been speaking about it long ago. I know Jeremy as leader was under all kinds of almost impossible pressures. And I'm not critical of him in that. I think, you know, he has good qualities and not so good qualities. But that the members have been intimidated into this silence is absolutely scandalous. It's a freedom of speech issue. We don't go around in a comradely way abusing people. We don't do that. I was political education officer in one constituency branch for many years, and we speak with absolute respect for each other, and we know the guidelines on a whole lot of issues. But what worries me is this intimidating atmosphere in which people are not able to state the obvious.
Can I just interrupt you, because I don't want to get into any trouble. So
no, you're right.
I don't really know. I mean, I don't know where I get on this, but I just wanted to speak about the Labour Party's fragility. But anyway, I'll move on to Claire. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Claire.
Hi there.
Hi. What you wanted to speak about the party's governance and that it's not fit for purpose, really.
Exactly. I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing over recent weeks and months have been down to the complete lack of transparency in the legal and governance unit. It's been like that for a long, long time, way before Jeremy Corbyn took control of Labour Party HQ. Cases were sat in the legal and governance unit for years. I mean, I've put in complaints. I'm sure most of us on here have had need to make a complaint. There's probably hundreds, possibly thousands of complaints just sitting there with a number dropped into an abyss. You never find out what happens to your complaint. You've no idea who's dealing with it because you don't get a person attached to that number so that you can follow it up. It's an important area, I think. And nobody in the party seems to take any responsibility for the running of the legal and governance unit. I mean, we all agree that there's anti-Semitism in the party, but there's also Islamophobia, there's misogyny in the party, there's homophobia in the party. People have been treated appallingly by a party that we think stands up for us and will speak up for us on these issues. Yeah. And I think a further important problem is the role of regional offices. They serious issues in many of these where decisions are made on the whim of an officer. They can't be challenged anywhere within the party, and if you don't like it, leave. That's the alternative. And my impression is that the party's run for the benefit of the paid staff and the PLP, not for the membership, who are at best considered an irrelevance, and at worst, particularly on an individual basis, as people that deserve the appalling treatment they get. I'd like to thank you anyway, Crispin, because I think this is a fantastic show and it's a chance for us to get together and show some solidarity with each other. It's been a dreadful week. Lots of members have felt the need to resign. Lots of us are just sticking in, hoping that being here and kicking up a fuss will change things.
Well, thank you, Claire. It's good for you to say that, and thank you for participating. Duncan in Southampton, you've got a legal background as well. I just saw you've put some things in the chat. Are you fearful about that they can find any basis for suspending people?
Well, I've always been fearful of that because the bottom line is the rules state that you can be suspended by the NEC on the basis of an allegation of a breach of the constitutional rules or standing orders of the party. So all it requires is for somebody to make an allegation that there's been a breach, and that gives the NEC the authority to suspend you as a member. And as we've seen, in some cases, the suspensions have been for up to, 4 years? I believe there have been members who have been suspended for 4 years. I mean, the entire disciplinary process is a fascistic pile of nonsense, quite frankly, and it has been for years. I have been struggling, fighting with people like Glynis and others against this for years here. The rot, in my view, set in 2017. And there's some good stuff in the report from the EHRC. I also think, by the way, that there are substantial legal problems with the EHRC report, and I think quite a lot of it doesn't actually hold up legally. So I'd like to see it challenged in court. But moving on from that, there's some recommendations there in relation to things like, an independent process on. That's fine. But an independent process is no good if the rules that independent process actually apply are drivel. And what we have at the moment is 218 when it was reformed in 2017. And I remember having a lengthy argument with Jenny Formby about this at the time and warning her of where this would go if they put this god-awful rule into place, and she didn't listen. And a lot of people didn't listen. So, you know, there's leadership in Unite there who didn't listen in 2017, and they've dug some of their own hole. Now, the problem you have with 218 is that basically it sets up a situation where the NEC just has to consider, and the NCC, whether somebody feels that they've been offended basically by some comment. So if somebody claims that it's, let's say, anti-Semitic, racist, whatever, and they feel that it is, that's sufficient for you to be convicted of it. There is no objective test applied to this, whether an ordinary person would look at this and see, was this actually anti-Semitic or racist or so on? And there is no test of what your intent was either. So again, there's no consideration of, did you intend to actually make a racist or anti-Semitic comment, or did you just say something because you don't know any better, or you've made a mistake? And what we've had is a situation now where what is defined as an offence has broadened to the extent where I you know, with Glynis and others, we worked on cases. We've helped over 1,000 people. We got involved in this after the purge in 2016, where, by the way, 11,000 members were suspended during that period by people like Joanne Baxter. And so now, one of the problems that you saw there was that, you know, there was no consideration of whether there's a genuine case of somebody. It's just a suspension for whatever. And the difficulty you have now is that if we have an independent process put in place, it's not going to be any use if the rules that it's applying are still the same problematic and frankly unfair, unjust and absurd rules that we now have in place in Rule 218, and it's now split into 218, 219. I mean, one of the things that changed in 2017, it was prior to 2017, there was a protection in there that if it was deemed to be, if it was an expression of belief and opinion, the NCC and the NEC could not take it into account. Particularly the NCC couldn't take it into account in determining whether you commit an offence. So you had essentially, we had a rule-based protection for freedom of speech in the party. That was taken away in 2017 as part of that reform, and it's still there. Now the situation you have is that even if it's an expression of belief and opinion, if it's deemed to be in breach of one of the codes of conduct, then that is removed and you can still be punished for it. And let's remember here that the codes of conduct are written by the NEC, so it's not conference that writes out what rules are going to be breached, what is in the code of conduct. It's the NEC. Now, I've been through the rule book backwards and forwards. I've been through rule books actually since 2013. I've been reading the rule book backwards and forwards, and there is no power there for the NEC to make up new disciplinary rules. But that's what they're doing by putting in place the codes of conduct that exist in Appendix 9 in the rule book. Yeah. And the other problem we have there is that they don't, I mean, the GLU drive me absolutely potty because they are cretinously stupid. And I have had many conversations with them, and it's like talking to a house brick. They are ridiculous. They do not understand the basic legal provisions and the basic legal structure that the party operates under. I've had conversations. I've had to try and explain to them what an unincorporated association actually is, what that means in legal terms in contract law, and they don't understand it. Now, these are the people that are supposed to advise the rest of the party on legal compliance, and they don't actually understand what the legal structure of the Labour Party is. If you look at Appendix 9, it says this forms the contract between the members and the Labour Party. Well, it can't, because the Labour Party doesn't have a legal personality because it's an unincorporated association. It does not exist as a legal entity that can form a contract. So it's impossible to have a contract between a member and the Labour Party. You can only have contract between the members of the party. That's how an unincorporated association works. The rules are the terms of the contract. Now, you know, instead what we've got is the NEC making up new ones in the codes of conduct that are not part of the rules because they're not passed through conference. There doesn't seem to be anything in the rule book that allows them to actually do this. And then these things are being used as part of the determinations of whether people have breached Rule 218 or not, because they're supposed to be taken into account. But I have seen multiple cases where they've given reasons to people for why they've been expelled. And it is because you have breached the code of conduct and the definition in the IHRA. And I've seen people who've been punished and expelled for things like tweeting a section of the speech from John F. Kennedy, where he spoke to South American leaders in 1960 and told them those who make peaceful revolution impossible create conditions for violent revolution. Right. Somebody quoted John F. Kennedy and got punished for it.
So what you're saying is nobody can be safe from being suspended, because anyone could be suspended for anything on a whim almost.
Yes, basically, yes. You could literally, yeah. If the GLU decide to suspend you for something, they could suspend you. I mean, I've been surprised I haven't been suspended, quite frankly.
Well, let's see.
I've spent so much time annoying them and fighting with them that it amazes me they haven't suspended me. But I think they know that they need to have something solid, because I'll sue them if they try and suspend me. So, you know, I've sued the party once already. I'm going to sue them again probably shortly. So, you know.
Well, let's see how many people are left see how many of us are suspended by the end of the week, and we'll come back next week and do a suspension count.
That's the thing, isn't it? Remember, you know, the purge, 11,000 members got suspended.
Yeah, they can get rid of all this Zoom calls straight away. Right, I'm going to move on to Tosh, because Tosh, are you there?
There we go. I think I'm unmuted now, mate.
Yeah. So, what do you think?
Well, do you know, I'm actually quite upbeat about listening to what's happened today, because I'm sure we've all been a bit down. But you know, Howard and Michael and everybody what's been saying is dead right. We shouldn't be worried about what we're saying and what we're doing, as long as we are something like reasonable, and most of us are. Now, I'm from an industrial background. I do use some industrial language and stuff, but there's no wrong with that. Now, I'd rather have like in a union meeting, we would knock lumps out of each other verbally, make an agreement, make a decision at the end, and go and have a pint together. That's far more decent than what the people in Labour Party in power at the minute are trying to make us like. And just an example of that is recently in Doncaster, we're going through the selection process, and to get on the panel, the forms that they're getting people to fill in, good councillors who've been there for years, it's like it's made for office workers, if you know what I mean. And that's no disrespect to office workers. Industrial workers are different. And out of the people who didn't get through on that panel, all of them that I'm aware of were former industrial workers. I've been on an appeal with one, and we've got him back in there. It really is an attempt to get rid of people like us, I think, people that the Labour Party was built on. And I've just got to say about the difference between Starmer and Corbyn. Corbyn's such a laid-back, gentle, honest, decent man. Keir Starmer I think he's a man who's desperate at the minute. I don't think they wanted to suspend Corbyn this quickly, but I think they're frightened and they got pushed into it. I think they wanted to build up a better case against him, and I think they're wanting to do that a lot more. When you see Starmer backing Boris Johnson again now on keeping schools open through the lockdown that's coming, it's madness. When the trade unions, from the teachers' unions and the university unions, are saying it is spreading, it shouldn't be happening here, we need to be part of the lockdown. And the leader of the Labour Party, that was given birth to by the trade unions, is busy saying, I'll support Starmer and we need to get kids in school. When he said, well, I'll support Johnson rather, and when he said in Parliament at question time, I sent you a personal letter saying I'd help you to make sure all the kids get in school. It's shameful. As an elected politician locally in Doncaster, the first things that should come out of your mouth when something like this is happening is I support the trade union. No ifs, no buts. That's what you should be doing. And I'll tell you what else got to me as well with this. It's when Starmer and Johnson at question time a few weeks ago, Johnson made a quip about supporting terrorists, and he was obviously having a quip at Jeremy. And what came back from that was it gives Starmer the chance to get up and talk about how he's charged terrorists, he's taken them to court, he's jailed them and things. It was set up. The two of them are working hand in hand. I'm convinced about it. And we don't need to be too careful, because if they want rid of us, they're going to get rid of us. Simple as that. The only way we do it is by standing up against them. All my years in Labour Party, I have never worked against a leader. And we've had leaders I don't like, Blair and stuff. They weren't my first choice. But Brown wasn't my first choice. But I've never worked against one. But this is now the gloves are off, because that government, that leadership that we've got at the minute, and the parliamentary party have had no respect for elected leaders. They've thrown that in the bin. So the gloves are off. We need to fight for our wing of the party. And one thing I just want to finish, and I will finish on this, Crispin. on anti-Semitism. I remember, I'm proud that at the time I was a delegate to ASLEF's conference when we decided to expel a fascist, a real anti-Semite, a guy called Jay Lee, who was a prospective candidate for the BNP. We expelled him knowing we were probably in breach of some law or some rules. We followed that right the way through against the government, right up to the European courts. And we, with support from all the other trade unions and many other people who donated individually, we beat the British government and got the right for trade unions to expel fascists. That government was the New Labour government. So when they start throwing accusations about, they need to be careful and look at their own history. One of the proudest days when I was at national level of ASLEF was to be able to send every one of those checks back to the individuals and the trade unions who supported us, from trade unions who represent some of the lowest paid workers right up to the Professional Footballers Association who represent millionaires. So I won't have this New Labour type in our party, in the parliamentary party, lecturing us about anti-Semitism when we had to take them to the European Court to get the right for trade unions to expel real anti-Semites, fascists. So I think we need to be loud, we need to be proud, and we need to stand up, because these buggers will get rid of us anyway. No matter how much we try and be nice, they are scouring, looking for things. The fortunate thing is what we've heard from today, they're not that good at it, because we can beat them when it gets to courts. I'm so thankful of people like Howard and Mike. Mark.
Thank you, Tosh. Thanks for coming on. Alan in Liverpool, are you there?
I am there, yeah.
I know you weren't expecting to be called, but what's your view on what you've heard?
My view is that basically people have got to show some spine on this. I mean, there is nothing to stop us defending Jeremy Corbyn and to demanding his reinstatement. I mean, we had the rally 24 hours after the announcement, and people make criticisms, but I mean, we did try and draw a line in the sand and say we've got to stand up. We got the 7 unions taking a stance to engage with Kia and to try and get Jeremy reinstated. We need CLPs and executives to pound in motions and continue to build it. I mean, the Socialist Campaign Group has put out a statement. We've got to build on those sort of initiatives, get a campaign really rolling. And just to say Jeremy stays, Starmer started to prevaricate today. And I think we just got to keep piling on the pressure to remove the previous leader on really dubious grounds. I mean, everybody knows that when he said factually, it was used. Of course it was. And we got to state this firmly. And we have got to say this guy previously, this is unparalleled and it is unacceptable, and Jeremy stays. Otherwise, we don't have any semblance of a party with socialist ideas energized and going forward. And when Keir builds his whole kitsch on unity, well, let's see that unity. We want to win the next election. And we've seen a drop in the YouGov polling that shows Labour actually shooting itself in the foot. I mean, we need to energize our members, and the left and the unions are a huge part of our electoral coalition. You alienate them, you don't win that next election. No chance.
Thank you very much. I'm going to speak to Rob.
Hello.
Hi, Rob. So, I think we could all be suspended just for being on this Zoom.
Yeah.
So we might as well go down with a bang, eh? Why don't we all just why don't we sing a song together? But you've written no, this is a classic of yours though.
Yeah, it's a classic of mine. Yeah, I couldn't think of anything. I wanted to think about how we will keep going, and we do keep going. So I wrote this song 27 years ago. I think it's time of the second miners' strike, and it's called Undefeated.
What will they say of us 100 years from now? when they look back on these unhappy days. They shake their heads at how so many swallowed lies. The dog-eat-dog so long went undefeated. And will they curse us then? There's so much death crept in, there was so little left to build again. Or will their smile salute like a song recall the ones who through it all went undefeated? And I'm tired of wearing thin these same old words and rage. Some days the bad guys win, but nothing's changed. Though the language failed and the nerves of love grow numb, somehow we carry on undefeated, holding all people's lives to be of equal worth, more dear than the money talk or the tricks of the state. We are the hands that work no wrong, the breath that lifts the song, the hearts that hold each other undefeated. We are the hands that work no wrong, the breath that lifts the song, the hearts that hold each other undefeated. The hands that work no wrong, the breath that lifts the song, the hearts that hold each other undefeated. The hearts that hold each other undefeated. The hearts that hold each other undefeated.